This is a very lonely job working at TechCrunch TV. I have lots of people on my show I have no connections with. So today I thought I would change this. I've invited a guy on the show who not only am I connected with, geographically and commercially, but also someone who provides me at home with my connections. I live in Santa Rosa, California, just north of San Francisco, and my ISP is Sonic.net. So I've invited on Dane Jasper, who is the CEO and the co-founder of Sonicnet, to talk about the ISP business and what it means to be in the business of connecting everyone all the time. So Dane, welcome to TechCrunch TV.
Thank you.
How did you get to be the co-founder of Sonic.net?
We started in 1994, and it was an offshoot of the local community college in Santa Rosa JC, which was the first community college in the state to get internet access, and myself and my co-founder, Scott Doty, were in charge of connecting students. And we were doing an audit, and we found out there were a lot of stolen accounts. And we were trying to figure out why, a 82-year-old woman who was taking aqua aerobics was on the internet, downloading, swimsuit photos and upsetting people. And what we found was that someone was stealing student identities and selling access at the high school next door for $25. And the two of us realized that if there was a black market for this internet access thing, we really needed to get in on it.
So you got in 1995. At that point, who were you competing against?
So back then, internet access was very hard to come by. And if you weren't an employee of Hewlett-Packard, now Agilent, O'Reilly & Associates up in Sebastopol, or at one of the colleges, you really couldn't get online. And then there began to appear dial-up providers, entities like CompuServe and others that got into the internet space. So, it was a sparse market back then.
So in the beginning, you were competing, with CompuServe AOL?
Correct, yeah. Other dial-up providers that, initially were sort of large bulletin boards that then became walled gardens to the internet as dial-up portals.
So why didn't you become CompuServe or AOL? You've maintained a good size, I think. You haven't gone massive, but at the same time, you survived over the last 20 years.
Yeah, there has been a lot of consolidation. There was a huge boom in the late 90s, when internet access was just modem banks and servers. There were, in the United States, literally thousands and thousands of internet providers. And then, with the advent of broadband and the challenges from a regulatory and technology perspective that are embodied in that, we've seen nothing but consolidation. And in many locations, it's effectively, one choice or two or three choices.
Why have we seen this kind of consolidation?
There are a number of reasons. The short answer is it's a regulatory intent. So in 1996, the United States passed the Telecom Act, which was intended to open competition in local and long-distance voice and data services. And then in 2002, the FCC engaged in forbearance. They declined to enforce portions of that act. In other words, they closed the competitive market. And the intent, the philosophy, was one of multimodal competition. So instead of having many, many competitors, you'd have 5 modes of competition. And by clearing the decks of competition, beyond that, you'd have coaxial cable and an incumbent cable company. You'd have twisted pair copper, an incumbent phone company. Broadband over power lines, which really hasn't taken off. Wireless, fixed and mobile, and satellite. And the idea under the 2002-2003 FCC was that this concept of multimodal competition would be superior to the sort of free-for-all competition that other countries adopted. And if you look at the cost per bit and the speed delivered to consumers in America, I think we would say that that hasn't worked.
So are you arguing then that the consequences of bad legislation coming out of Washington, D.C. has slowed down people's access to the internet in the U.S.?
Bad regulation, and in some ways it has worked. So Comcast, Time Warner, and other cable companies have engaged in upgrades across their network, and they dominate broadband now. DOCSIS 3, Comcast just announced a few weeks ago, they completed DOCSIS 3 deployments, which allow for faster services. And meanwhile, incumbents like Verizon and AT&T have pushed forward with Verizon fiber to the home, AT&T fiber to the node. And so in some ways, we could concede that that worked. But in others, Americans pay more per bit, are forced to buy TV more frequently, have more introductory pricing and expensive long-term packages. So we certainly spend more. And I would argue that that has been less efficient than a more competitive marketplace would have been.
Dane, Sonicnet is a reseller of other people's access. Is that fair?
So we sell DSL on AT&T's DSL network. We started that in 1998. So they, in that environment, run the equipment in the telco exchange, the backhaul to us, and then we run the internet access, so layer 3 IP and out to the internet, and all the services that go with it, email and web hosting and connectivity, DNS, so on. But in becoming a telephone carrier ourselves in 2006, we began building our own infrastructure. So now we put equipment into all of the exchange buildings. So today we're in basically every telephone exchange from San Jose to Healdsburg, Greater Bay Area. We're turning up Sacramento right now.
Who are you competing against in that?
So in that environment, we're competing with large carriers like AT&T and Comcast, and other competitive carriers, companies like what used to be Covad, now called Megapath. And while companies like them focus on businesses, we focus on consumers and very small businesses.
So then there is an opportunity for, I wouldn't say a startup, but nimble, smaller companies like yours to compete against the AT&Ts and the Comcasts in the ISP space.
We certainly believe that there is an opportunity there. And our company, we've been in business 17 years, but in the last year, we grew 50% in headcount. And so we certainly feel like we're back in a startup mode. It feels like the late 90s again. It's very exciting.
What is the most exciting product you're offering consumers? I would love to have your fiber to the home product, but I'm in Santa Rosa rather than Sebastopol, so it's only wealthy guys like Tim O'Reilly who get, I suppose, the best Sonic stuff.
Our philosophy is copper first and fiber to follow. So we've rapidly deployed next generation copper products. So that would be ADSL 2+ today with pair bonding, VDSL in the near future. And that allows us to cover a broad area very quickly and offer uncapped, unlimited, untiered products. But in the long run, copper is constrained by distance primarily. So the long run plan is fiber to the premise. And so we've begun that.
But fiber to the premise is not necessarily fiber to the home. That's fiber to the curb. What's the difference?
No, fiber to the premise is more generically fiber to the business, fiber to the home, as opposed to fiber to the node or curb, which would not reach the premise. So a carrier like AT&T, for example, brings fiber to the neighborhood, fiber to the node,
and then
they use copper the rest of the way. We bring fiber the entire distance. And
But you don't bring it to the district. You work off the AT&T backbone.
No, we build it the whole distance.
Oh.
And
you have the resources? Because my understanding of, say, the Verizon fiber to the home initiative is it costs many billions of dollars.
Yes.
So how does a startup like yours fund fiber to the home?
So we haven't built much of it yet.
How much have you built?
So today we've built a pilot in Sebastopol. That pilot region only passes a bit over
And I bet the only home it goes to is Tim O'Reilly, right?
Actually, it does not reach his house.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But today, the initial pilot area only reaches about 700 homes.
So what's the point of doing it?
So the point of doing it is that in the long run, that's the end game. And so you have to push in that direction to build the economic model around that. And we believe that there is an economic model for fiber to the premise. It requires decreasing costs of construction, which we've seen, and it requires very high uptake in the market. And we believe that delivering gigabit service at a very low cost and 100 megabit service at an even lower cost drives uptake. So the idea is we deliver copper today as fast as it'll go, uncapped, unlimited. So it's ADSL2 plus at up to 20 megabits now with a phone line, with unlimited calling and all the features, and we sell that for $39.95. Then as we overbuild with fiber, we replace that product with a fiber product to the premise. Today, that product is a 100 megabit product. Still, you get a phone line. Still, it costs $39.95. And we effectively get to replace the lease of the copper line from the exchange to the premise, with, which is an operating expense, with a capital expense. Instead, you build fiber. And over time, that ROIs, that cash flows. And the challenge is the uptake, what your percentage uptake is. And in Sebastopol, we have about 30% of the market. And 30% market share creates a return.
How much is fiber to the home in Sebastopol?
So 100 megabit service is $39.95.
Well, why am I paying $70 in Santa Rosa for non-fiber to the home? I'm
So
getting ripped off.
that's a good question.
I'm gonna
because
talk to your
we haven't built it yet. So the two products that we sell are single line and dual line bonded. The single line is ADSL2 plus at up to 20 megabits and a phone line, $39.95. And then what you have is two phone lines and bonded broadband at up to 40 megabits, which we sell for $69.95. The concept is that once you achieve market penetration at a certain level, that then you replace that, you overbuild fiber, and you replace one for the other at the same price. You swap the single line customers to 100 megabit and the two line customers to 1 gigabit. So we have customers in Sebastopol who are paying exactly what you're paying, and I'm sorry, they're getting 1 gigabit.
Well, what I've heard today is the best reason for me to move to Sebastopol. But Dane, finally, can wireless catch up with wired? Can the wireless revolution make all this fiber to the home redundant? In 5 or 10 years, is everyone going to be on wireless?
Not for video. So
and this is video, of course.
Yes.
So if you want to watch me, you got to have wired.
Yes, and if you want entertainment at home, you're going to need wired in the long run. You know, fundamentally, wireless is going to be web browsing and Twitter and small content, email and so on, and it will continue to notch up. And you'll see good burst speeds. You know, you'll see LTE networks that burst to 12 or more megabits, but they'll have 5 gigabyte per month caps. That's only a couple hours of video. So if you want to watch a movie or two from Netflix, you're going to need a wired connection. And so we believe that there is a long-term prospect for wired access, specifically around entertainment and video.
Well, Dane Jasper, you've just given me the best reason to stay on wired if you want to watch Keen on TechCrunch TV.
There you go.
You've got to have your wired connection. Thank you so much for appearing on TechCrunch TV. And I'd love to have you back very soon, providing, of course, you bring down my price of broadband and you give me fiber to the home.
Well, we'll work on it, Andrew. Thank you.